So would you recommend if I was 17 and I think I want to be a chef, but I don't know, what would you tell
I would say don't ever go to culinary school.
me? Yeah, thank you. High five for
I,
that.
if I didn't go to culinary school, I did have student loans, then maybe I'd have some more options at this point in my life.
When people ask me, like I get Instagram messages of like, what should I do to become a successful chef? And I'm like, well, don't get yourself in debt.
I will say there's more options, I think, for chefs right now in this world to be able to have the life they want to lead, and
So I want to start with asking you, like, what are you doing these days? What's your life like? A day in your life?
oh man, a day in my life. Well, I feel like a day in my life is never the same. um, right now, I have my tiny fish company, which is finally getting off the ground, so to speak. I've got lots of inventory that I've been sitting on, and just all of my events over the summer and traveling to different cities and whatnot. Finally, I have a little bit more brand awareness, and I've got some good publications coming out soon, which will be really great for the holidays. But the way that I kind of manufacture that company is that I can run it pretty easily by myself.
Nice.
And I can do that remotely, which is really nice. Lends itself to a lot of flexibility. Obviously, being a chef for so long, I never got that. Kind of had my head in the sand for quite a while, not paying attention to my personal life or being able to get away from the kitchen and explore the beautiful world we live in. So now that I have some flexibility with doing some private events, I hustle on the side for personal income, and then running the company. Like I said, I can do that pretty much anywhere I got Wi-Fi.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think this year, and for as long as I can muster it, I'm gonna just try to live as flexible a life as I can, so I can have a little bit better that work-life balance that I've been working my butt off for.
Yeah, something that chefs really don't get until they start some type of side gig like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, yeah, it is the career that I chose, but, going back to when I chose that career, you're so young, and if I didn't go to culinary school, I did have student loans, then maybe I'd have some more options at this point in my life. But I wanted to. I have to work for a living, like most of us do, and at the ripe age of 18, I'm like, okay, well, I guess, the one thing I know that makes me happy is being around food and working with food. So that's the path I chose, but I still think there's plenty of space within the food industry to kind of carve out your own path, especially now that we're back from the pandemic, and there are a little bit I will say there's more options, I think, for chefs right now in this world to be able to have the life they want to lead. And some people have that desire and they want to work in restaurants, and that's great. I just don't think that just never was exciting to me. The most exciting thing to me was I love food. But growing up, my family, I didn't come from money or anything. So for us, traveling was, I'm from San Diego area. Going on vacation was either Disneyland or visiting my grandparents in Illinois. That's it. So for me, food was that way too. And it was very not authentic food that I'm growing up with, but it's just a way to explore a different culture, really. So that for me was the big draw about working with food, is I get to kind of see the world through food, even if I can't travel to those places.
Yeah, for sure. So would you recommend if I was 17 and I think I want to be a chef, but I don't know, what would you tell
I would say don't ever go to culinary school.
me? Yeah, thank you. High five for
I
that.
I know. I have not very good things to say about culinary school. I think it's a racket. If you're gonna spend the money, you can spend half as much money, charge up some credit cards, travel the world, go to Europe, stock up places, and get your experience that way. Work from the bottom up in a kitchen, because even if you go to culinary school, you have to work from the bottom up anyways. So put the work in, go to normal school, have a fallback plan,
Yeah.
or don't go to school at all and wait until, I think as humans and as we get older, I'm in my mid 30s and I've gone through so many iterations of who I am and what I want out of life. And it really is so hard, I think, when you're so young to have to choose the path and stick to that path. Because, there's like I said, there's so many different facets of the food industry that I'm interested in with regards to, the psychology of, eating and how it smells and affects the taste and the chemistry behind food. That is very, very interesting to me, but sure does require some schooling to
Yeah.
get a full grasp of it.
Yeah, I think when people ask me, like, I get Instagram messages of like, what should I do to become a successful chef? And I'm like, well, don't get yourself in debt because you don't know if you're going to want to continue to do this.
Right,
And
right.
ideally, we want freedom. Like, that's what we want, I think, as human beings, is to be able to do whatever we want whenever we want, as we get older,
Absolutely.
for sure. So getting into debt is a terrible idea. And traveling, it's a great idea. Having a great attitude
Yeah,
in the kitchen is a great idea
absolutely.
because then you'll move up.
Absolutely. I mean, another thing that I did, and maybe not super awesome at this point with the economy too, but when I did have some extra money in my pocket, I actually started my own retirement fund. I think that's a lot of things people don't realize too, is that working in small privately owned restaurants, you don't have any sort of retirement happening, So my retirement is limited to what I contributed in my personal retirement fund, which is not much. It will grow as the stock market hopefully recovers. But that's a really, really important thing too, to kind of set yourself up for success. At the end of the day, is it going to cover me fully for retirement? Absolutely not. But I do know that, if I if I make it to that ripe old age of 65, or if I do need to like pull money from there and get taxed on it, I have that little kind of decent security net to a certain degree. So it's about taking care of yourself too, and forward thinking, especially if you want to do this career, because it is very hard. And sometimes you're flush with money and sometimes you're not going to be. It's very, very fickle industry.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I wish that culinary school was exactly that. Like, first period, you're going to learn how to meditate so you can keep your shit together,
Yes.
you know?
Yep.
Period two,
Absolutely.
finances, like save your money, be smart, invest,
Absolutely.
the right way.
Culinary school to me should be like, yeah, you should learn some basics, of course, in the kitchen, but it should be more about business. I think the business side of things and how to actually run a restaurant, like you said, with financials in mind, how to read a P&L statement, how to create a P&L statement, like have a QuickBooks, seminar, to because that was a really big thing. I actually felt, as a chef, like people thought I was dumb. That she doesn't know how to run a business. She just knows how to cook. And it's, I'm like, no, I'm not, I'm smart. I can do this. It's just that no one's taught me and no one's gone through that with me. And I didn't go to business school. So this last couple years, I've basically been giving myself a crash course and all that stuff, whether it's YouTube videos or just messing up consistently. I've been working my butt off to try to figure out all those things, and it's been fun, and I definitely learned quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that's key in the economy of today. It's like you got to learn how to make money somehow outside of
Hmm.
your cooking, or turn your cooking into like the thing that you actually love doing. Because like I worked in restaurants forever and I've loved it. It's awesome. It's fucking great, but it's not sustainable forever. And
No,
now I'm like, fuck, I spent so many years behind a line. What do I do now? And I'm like, oh shit, I know how to cook. I can teach people how to cook. And I'm actually excited about the idea of people knowing how to cook, because I think that that makes our communities better. Like, it makes people healthier. It makes people make better
absolutely,
choices if they're cooking their own stuff. So like that's
absolutely,
an avenue that a lot of chefs are taking now after COVID, when COVID ended. Now
yeah.
we do, like, we can teach. That's a great way to do that.
Right. And, another thing, I never even had the desire to like teach. I honestly, I didn't even want to be like a executive chef. I just enjoyed cooking. Wasn't until I hit, I think like, early 30s where I was really enjoying um being kind of that mentor figure to my cooks at that point, and showing them things. And I think it also had to do with feeling very confident in my skills, and knowing, hey, I've been doing this for over a decade. I do know what I'm doing,
Mhm.
and I can absolutely teach people. I think that's definitely a great point. It's pretty rewarding to be able to teach people some basic skills, and I think it also adds value to their dining out experience. The more that normal, regular ass people know what it takes to create a dish, or how long it takes, to make that come alive. I think the more willing that they are when they go to a restaurant to pay a higher price because they know what goes into it.
Yes, totally. Yeah, it's
Yeah, and I mean, with inflation now too, prices of restaurants, I really don't think they're even where they should be right now. They're gonna have to get a lot higher, and I just don't know. I still think the restaurant industry is in pretty dire straits, and it probably will be for the next 7 to 10 years, because the price is going to have to go up way too high, and I don't think it's going to be accepted very well.
yeah, but I think it needs to happen,
It
like,
needs to
we
happen,
don't have a choice.
absolutely, of course. Yeah.
It's the education part that how do we tell people, look, you have to pay more money. Otherwise, something that people think is that you got to have cheap things right away. Uh,
Right.
and that somehow is good because people can afford it. But I think long term, having really cheap things actually fucks everything up, because now we're like, it's
Absolutely.
like a race to the bottom. And so we're having to buy the cheapest of everything. And so like
Mhm.
factory farming becomes more needed, because like I love eating really good food. Like I've been around it long enough, so I'm like, I want to eat really fucking good food. But I don't want to be preachy to like the burrito place that I know they're not
Right.
eating a local whole pig. It is like, so how do we
Totally.
not become preachy and like assholes as we like are judging these businesses that they have to sell a burrito for $8? Otherwise, people don't buy the fucking burrito. Like,
Right.
what
Right.
happens if you open a
Absolutely.
burrito place with a $20 burrito? Who buys it? Because that
Yep.
would be sustainable. So
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's really hard because you're not going to have people doing the right things, and that's kind of what I have been exploring in the whole CPG world, is that I'm realizing there's so many products on the shelves that really aren't made by chefs. They're made by marketing people. They're made by corporate people. They're made by, I don't know, people who just had a wild idea or lucked into something. And so many products, like, I'm not going to shit all over Trader Joe's. I know people love Trader Joe's. I don't particularly shop there, but all their stuff is branded, whatever, canned beans, etc. Everything says Trader Joe's on it. But basically all they're doing is they're buying white label stuff, and then they're slapping their name on it. So essentially speaking, if you're in the tinned fish aisle, you've got Trader Joe sardines. They literally are the same sardines as another company. They just have a different name on them. And you can see that by the packing code on the actual product, that they're coming from the same factory, they're packed the same, and it essentially is probably the same product that you're buying. It's pretty wild. So I really, when I speak about my products, I also speak to encouraging chefs to create more CPG products, because if you have someone who has a marketing background, but they're in the food CPG world, and you have a chef who's doing the same thing, as a chef, we're always going to be like, well, our name's on it. We got to make sure it's delicious and nutritious for consumers, and so yeah, we're going to want to make money too, but our first thought is not the money.
yeah,
Whereas, if you're, say, on the marketing side of things, all you're thinking about is the bottom line and the dollar, and the quality is kind of not your first thought, and the nutrition is not your first thought. So for me, it's super important to just kind of continue to encourage chefs and continue to inform consumers, like, hey, look at the labels, scrutinize them, and see where your food is actually coming from. There's a lot of companies out there, you've got these sustainable claims on the package. Look at the package. Where's the fish actually coming from? Is it actually sustainable when you take into consideration the carbon footprint of producing it? Is it, sourced from abroad and then freighted over? Because at that point, is the product actually sustainable?
Yeah. Yeah. My dream is that every chef and like every whatever, like every guitar maker, people that love doing a certain thing, like we all can succeed and we can all help each other succeed, because that's the difference
Absolutely.
between a small business. Like your brand, it's you. Like if it's not
Absolutely.
good, I point the finger at you. But if it's a
Yep.
giant corporation, who am I going to point the finger to? And then also within that corporation, everyone's pointing fingers at each other because it's like, well, it's not me. I'm just the accountant here. Like, oh, it's not me. I'm just, and so they all point the
Yeah.
finger, and then no one gets the blame, and then they're just destroying the planet in the process, and just for the sake
Yeah.
of,
Yeah, it's been easier for me to kind of understand how messed up the food system is
Yes.
because of it. And at the end of the day, I think it's so important for people to understand that you might have to pay a higher price. Again, you're going to have to pay a higher price. My products are at a higher price, but that is because I source everything domestically. I keep it very local, and that comes at a higher price. But I want to make sure that when I say my product is sustainable, I'm doing as much as I possibly can. Whether it's not just the sourcing, it's not just the ingredients. It's the whole process. It's the whole process of me using a Portland-based distributor. It's taking into account everything about sustainability and not just like where I'm getting things or the species of fish. It's as a whole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and being smart with our money. Like I live in Independence. I'm like like an hour south of Portland, and it's a tiny little
Mhm.
town. And we have one little bakery, which is I love it, and it's not like comparable to like a big city bakery. It's like just a small town
Mhm.
bakery, but I fucking love it, and I go there all the time, and I'm happy to support them. You know what I mean? Even if I'm broke,
Absolutely.
I'm still going to tip them really big, because
Absolutely.
the idea of like spending our money smartly, like if I'm gonna buy some sardines or if I'm gonna buy some smoked oysters, whatever, like my choice of who I give my money to actually has an impact in the world and in the future and
It
in
does.
everything. So I much rather give you money because you're giving it to the people that are doing it here. And then so it's a
Right.
cycle of we're all helping each other out. So we all have a better future, you know?
Absolutely. And I again, going back to like my brain explosion of, learning this whole CPG world, it's so much more cutthroat because you have those different industry minds in the food world. And I think as chefs and restaurant people, we think of the food world with a sense of community in mind and of helping each other out and knowing that there's always healthy competition, and that's what drives us to be more creative and to better ourselves as opposed to like tearing other businesses down and trying to slander them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fucking crazy. I feel like we have to help each other out. Otherwise, like, what is the point? Like, I want to be a good
Yeah.
cook. And I want to make a living. And I'm not going to do that on my own. I'm going to do that. Like when I became a private chef or doing personal stuff outside of the restaurant, the first thing that I did is I reached out to other chefs that were doing the same thing, on Instagram. And I
Mhm.
was like, I looked up their stuff and I was like, oh, you guys are doing really fucking cool shit. I really like
Mhm.
it. Like, I'm Andre and I'm trying to do the same, but like, I'm a nice guy. I'm here to help you. And you know what I mean? Like, just giving them something as opposed to becoming a competitor, So I'm like, if you ever need anything, I'll
Absolutely.
work for you for free or for really cheap. I'll come help you do dishes or whatever. And so it's like demonstrating that I'm not a bad guy that's going to try to take their business.
Yeah.
If you do that, then ultimately you end up losing, because then you're
Yeah.
the person that no one likes, you know? And so no one's going to.
Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of homework before I started this company, and years ago, actually, when I was still, I'm getting it all together in my brain, I had called, this is pre-pandemic, I had actually called, one of the larger canneries in the south of Oregon, and, I reached out to a bunch of them. Only one guy got back to me, and we were talking on the phone. We had this huge phone conversation, and he basically flat out said, "Why should I help you? You're my competition." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. I didn't really like think about it that way." And
Mhm.
he basically was like, "I don't understand why you want to do this. Would you grow up on a boat or something?" And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. All right, let's
Wow.
calm down." Like, I'm not trying to do what you're doing exactly. Let's just rein it in. I'm just trying to get information on the process behind, what it takes to run a cannery, like, can I get a tour?
Mhm. Did he end up helping you or no?
No, basically I had to listen to him tell me his life story and about how hard it was and about how I shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, thanks for
Yeah.
that.
So I'm guessing that you started this idea because of your travels to Spain, right?
Yeah, I spent quite a bit of time in Spain. Obviously, they love tin seafood there. When I was working in my last stint in Spain, I was in the Basque region, and we worked 6 days a week. So usually we would celebrate our Friday pretty hard, and the next day would be even more difficult. So I would usually just pop down to the corner store and, like, I don't know, grab a bottle of wine and a baguette. They love their cream cheese there, so I'd get some cream cheese and then pick up a can of fish and sit in my bed and make my hangover feel better.
Mhm. Yep.
And end up with a bunch of breadcrumbs and hopefully not spill some fishy oil in my bed.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it's always been something that I've been interested in, and it never seems like this reachable goal. And then, like I said, I had the opportunity, I had the platform, I finally had the investment, and I started doing my homework and asking around. And that's where I realized, oh, cool, I don't actually have to build the entire infrastructure of having a cannery. I can actually use a manufacturer. So, what's fun and interesting about my business is that I'm approaching a high volume manufactured product, but with a chef's perspective. And that's not something you find in the tinned fish world usually, or in any sort of manufactured good. A lot of those manufactured goods, you've got people going to co-packers, saying, this is kind of what I'm thinking, and you have to work with that co-packer on their limitations. And it's definitely more of what the co-packer gives you and can do and has familiarity with, as opposed to um, what the actual proprietary recipe is. So for me, it's really nice to be able to tell people, like, hey, I know that I touch every single tin, whether or not it's being mass manufactured or not. I touch every tin because I make the spice mixes and I make, all those things. I source the fish myself. I do touch every single thing in that can, regardless of, whether we're producing 100 units or 10,000 units.
Yeah. So what is your biggest challenge? I feel like when I think
Mhm.
about it, probably educating people that this is one of the greatest things you can eat, and it's delicious,
Mhm.
versatile, and amazing. Am I right in thinking that?
Yeah, I think it's educating people. I don't want to do the normal stuff. I don't want to do We have plenty of salmon in a can. We have plenty of tuna in a can on the shelves. It's how do we show people that you can tin other fish, because s- salmon and tuna that people love. It's like the chicken, and the beef.
Mhm.
And the more that we kind of stick to those mainstays, uh, basically every year fisheries are given a certain limit of how much they can catch, depending on what the population is size of these species are. So that limit is just going to decrease, which basically means the price is going to increase because the fishermen can't go out for as many of those things. But by tinning, for instance, rockfish, I want people to understand, hey, you know what? Counterintuitively, I'm actually trying to raise the price of rockfish because I want to incentivize fisheries to go out for those. They're not going to even want to go out for a fish if they can make their money because the price is so high on salmon and albacore. They're going to just go out for salmon and albacore. And then we're going to have a really big problem with the balance in the ecosystem of the ocean. So it's really educating people on that and making them understand that just like anything, we need to diversify our diet. If you're going to eat fish, if you're a fish eater, you should diversify the species of fish that you're eating.
Yeah, no doubt. It has huge ramifications for how our economy moves and everything.
Absolutely.
So what do you do
Yeah.
to do that education?
So that's why I travel around a lot. I use my network as a chef to go around and do dinners. I was just in San Francisco and I did a dinner with my friend who has a very like fancy restaurant concept, and it's really fun to show people, hey, I used shelf stable fish McCann, for this really fancy dinner. um, and I had a lot of uh, good feedback by doing that dinner, and a lot of people reached out wanting, journalists and whatever, wanting to kind of get a little bit more insight into my brain and like why I'm doing this the way that I'm doing it, and why I'm doing this the way that I'm doing it is because I don't know how to do anything else. My safe space is the kitchen. My safe space is restaurants, and I don't know anything about sales. I'm a terrible salesperson, but I do know restaurants. So I'm going to do what I can do best, which is go to restaurants, go to my friends, to my chef friends, and cook using my product and create a different audience for my product, not just the people walking through a cute fancy boutique shop or, a New Seasons. They're going to see my product in a different light. I want, especially with the, labor issues that we're having in restaurants and um, reducing waste in restaurants, lots of perishable loss that happens with goods. It's like, hey, guess what? Maybe consider, even if you are a full service restaurant, maybe consider having some tinned fish in your pantry and in your larder to share with people, because guess what? It's delicious and you don't have to refrigerate it and it's not going anywhere. It's just hanging out on a shelf. And all you have to do is pop the can. Go.
Yeah, I love it. I love the idea of just having the perfect snack, but I also love the
Hmm.
idea of getting super creative with the recipe, the way that other cultures have done forever, like, replacing you fish sauce for something, like a smoked oyster or whatever, and adding to
Absolutely.
dressings and adding to soups and adding to all kinds of stuff. Like that's such a cool idea of just another way to localize your pantry, because you can replace a lot
Absolutely.
of stuff that otherwise would come from other places and create new flavors that are like next level. Like what chefs do is exactly that, you know?
Yeah, I my friend on the East Coast, she buys my stuff, and she was just serving it like on a seafood tower, but then she started, she'll use half a tin per order
Mhm.
on like a mussel salad or whatever it is, and she blasts through it, and at a wholesale price using half a tin per order is actually not super, inappropriate cost wise to charge to a customer. It saves them on labor. They've got a very highly flavored thing. All they got to do is pop a little salad on it and
Mhm.
boom.
Yeah. And it's super healthy, right? I mean, it's one of the best things you can eat.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I pack mine with butter and olive oil, of
Mhm.
course.
Yeah.
But it is. It's super packed in protein. I like to say I do like uh, like a big burst of flavor in a tiny tin, so to speak.
Mhm.
And again, I've got bivalves on my menu. Bivalves are on my menu. On my that's my products. Bivalves are incredibly great for the marine environment. They help with erosion, especially mussels, and they're also filter feeders. So they actually help clean the water and make it a little bit nicer for all of us to enjoy.
That's awesome. What do you know about like seaweed? Is seaweed something that can be incorporated into what you're doing? Because that's also really good for.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not necessarily at this point where I can do R&D. I'm still sitting on a bit of inventory, but seaweed is very, very popular. There's a lot of there's actually some Spanish companies that are doing some really cool stuff with seaweed. You can make sauces out of it. You can just add it into the tin as some sort of complement. There's a company I think about in Alaska, and I know there's one in San Diego too, that they just specifically use seaweed to make hot sauces and salsas and, pickles. And I think one just came out with some sort of chili crunch condiment, made out of seaweed, which is really, really cool. I think that's a huge industry that is up and coming that will be an incredible addition to any sort of, tinned sea treat on the shelf.
Yeah, for sure. I worked with a couple companies, seaweed companies, and I realized how freaking
Oh,
delicious this stuff is, you know?
it is. It's
It's
delicious. I mean,
umami flavor.
yeah, yeah, and it's so, so good for you too. It really is good for you. Lots of antioxidants and lots of green things.
Yeah. Okay, so how can people listening or watching this, or how can we help you succeed in
Help
this
me,
venture?
help me.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Just tell your friends, hey, maybe I know $2 cans of tuna. They seem really enticing because they're $2 cans of tuna. And hey, I get it. Not all of us can certain things. But like you said, it's being smart about your money and understanding that the more of those $2 cans of tuna that we buy, unfortunately, it's just not helping with that balance in the economy or the balance in the ocean. Um, a lot of, that fish too is like farmed because of those limitations. Like I said, that fisheries can't go out for more than a certain limit of these fish. I used farm shellfish, but when it comes to bigger species of fish, I only want to do wild caught. Wild caught fish are a naturally regenerative resource. So that's really important to me is just educating people that I get it. I get it. Maybe, maybe all you have is a five in your pocket, and the $2 can of tuna is what you can afford. But save it up, maybe eat veggies that night, and really pay attention to the packaging and where your food is coming from and how, I guess, how the company might be trying to trick you into buying their product
Yeah.
by saying stuff like sustainably caught when at the end of the day, mm, is it fully sustainable if it's sustainably caught way over here and then you're like, oh, but it was packaged way over here, and I'm buying it from over here. The amount of here and there that it had to go through, is that actually sustainable? So just education.
Yeah. I have a really hard time trusting big companies, Like I hate
Hmm.
to say that and just put them all in one blanket of evil corporations, but there's a trust problem with them. Like the other day I was at the store with my
Yeah.
friend and we found this thing of mayonnaise and I was just like, look, I bet you $1,000 that what they're claiming in the front of this thing, it's not the truth. So it was like made with olive oil. And then you turn the thing around and it says first ingredient, soybean oil, second ingredient, canola oil, third
Yep.
ingredient, and then at the bottom it's like olive oil. And so they think that they're doing something good for themselves.
Yep.
And they think they can trust this
Mhm.
company that's telling them that it's healthier. But like they don't care. Like they're just like, if we
No,
stop olive oil in this, we'll sell more. And that's the end of
absolutely.
that. Somebody in a meeting is like if we put 2% legally, we can claim that that's the case, you know?
Yep.
And
Yep.
then, and that happens in like with everything, you know, like big
Everything.
restaurants and big food in general is just so terrible. And that's why, like, part of what I'm trying to do by having conversations with chefs is like, how can we help each other out? You know, like, how can we let people know that we can be trusted because it's us, it's our reputation.
Hmm.
Everything is running on that, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the one time where our ego as a chef actually comes in handy. It's
Yeah.
because, it's like we know our names on that product. We have that vulnerable feeling of like, I got to make it good. Even me, I'm like, I know I can make the next batch even tastier and better and more delicious and the texture better. And there are issues that I have to just deal with because at the end of the day, it's got to be cooked at steam under a lot of pressure for over an hour.
Right.
There's only so much you can do with
Yeah.
texture at that point.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important to just talk to regular consumers about, like you said, really investigating what's on that package. And I know it's such a time suck, but once you can find these companies, and you can be loyal to them, and it's
Yeah.
you look at the back of something and you're like, okay, I know all those ingredients,
Yeah.
great, I can read them all, perfect, I know exactly where my fish is coming from. And that's what I want people to know is like, hey, that your fish is coming from the Pacific Northwest because and that's it, from Northern California out to Alaska, boom, that's it, nowhere else.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's so cool. So I'm going to ask you a trick question because I think about this all the time.
Okay.
Like, my philosophy is all about sustainability and helping the little guy, and like, we can help each other out and we'll be okay as long as we team up. Uh, and so that means that I would say no, or at least I think I would say no to the large corporation coming to me and saying, Andre, if you say that you love Walmart, we'll give you $10
Mhm.
million, like that
Yeah.
line. So the question is like, what do you think you would do or say if, I don't know, some evil tuna fish company comes to you and says, hey, put your name on this and we'll give you $10 million? Like,
It's hard. It's hard because I think you also kind of have to weigh what you can do with a platform, and having a $10 million platform. I'm kind of like, do the pros outweigh the cons of the
yeah,
situation? Where it would come down to. I've definitely passed up like brand opportunities for other tinned fish companies. Obviously, it's a bit of a conflict of interest, and I've had brand opportunities with, for instance, like a bigger grocery store, we'll say Walmart,
mhm,
and it's okay, is everything in Walmart great? No, but there's also this sense of, living on a coast. I think that living on East Coast or West Coast, we have a very spoiled vision of what the food system is like. We are very spoiled. We've got lots of great options in the middle of the US. Sometimes the only place people can have to go shop is Walmart.
yeah.
And even at that point, they got to drive, 45 minutes to an hour to it. So, how do we then, as chefs, say, okay, we're going to back Walmart, but how can we make that experience better? Um, how can we show people like, okay, again, just make educated decisions, even if you are shopping in a Walmart.
That's an amazing answer. I wasn't expecting like
Oh,
such
thanks.
a thoughtful.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like you have to take everyone's personal perspective into view, and I don't think that we do that enough. It's very easy, especially as chefs, to be like, well, just buy locally made stuff. A lot of people don't have that option, and it's we have to understand that and come to terms with that and say, okay, if your option is this, how can we make this a little bit better?
Mhm.
So sure, partnering, with a Walmart maybe isn't gonna be great for your personal brand at first, but I think it's about exploring how you can help consumers make better decisions in those stores, and maybe how you can help that store make better decisions about the things that they buy. and put on their shelves.
Yeah, that's true. I think a lesson that I'm learning, I'm 38 and I'm just starting to learn that, is that we really should not shame other people for taking those contracts, because like
No,
I don't know if I'd take
no,
the $10 million, like I don't know
yeah,
what I would do. And maybe I would be like, fuck yeah, and then just peace out.
right.
I'm gonna go get an island and like, or maybe I would open a culinary school for free that actually teaches meditation in finances.
Right,
Like, but maybe I'll say no. And then maybe I'll be more empowered by saying no. So who knows, right? So like when you see
right.
other chefs or other people in general, like I have somebody I follow on Instagram that just signed a contract with like a car company, and
Hmm.
like now they're like driving cars, and I'm like, what? Like what
Yeah.
happened? But of course, they offered him some money, and so I'm happy for him.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we all got to look out for ourselves. And I very much, handful of years ago was like, oh, sell out, sell out, sell out. I could never be a sellout. And now I have a different tone, which is no, it's a different type of hustle. And it is a hustle,
Mhm.
especially if you're not in a restaurant. And how do you make a life for yourself outside of a restaurant? And also, just because you did that silly, sellout partnership or whatever, how are you going to give back
Yeah.
then to the restaurant community? That's a huge part.
Yeah, for sure. I think there, as long as there's a line, like I'll sign with
Hmm.
Walmart as long as we're not going to go and kill something. It's like, it's
Right.
not the greatest, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all about your personal values and what you believe in. And, hey, we all have a price, let's be honest.
yeah, totally. That's awesome. Honesty, I think it's super important, because I think whatever audience that we have, they can smell the bullshit,
Oh
like,
yeah.
so
Oh yeah.
even if we do sign, and if we're honest, we've always been honest, and we tell them, look, I made this money, but now I'm going to do this, whatever, like they'll always forgive us, those that actually care
Absolutely.
about us, that have followed our steps and all that.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Okay. Well, um, I want to help you out in any way that I can. So
Oh,
just
thanks.
end
That
with
means
that.
a lot.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. Well, I'll plug my product and say you can buy it at a store, but if you buy it online, you help me out a little bit more. Yeah, I sell everything online, the tinyfishco.com, and um, I've got lots of fun recipes on my website as well, which I just updated. So, I really want people to be able to buy my stuff, and you can eat it on its own, or you can make something really fun and exciting with it too.
Cool. Okay. I'm going to order some, and I'm going to make something creative, and then I'll post it.
Love it.
I'll tag you.
Cool. That sounds great. I
Cool.
love that idea.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you for your time. And
Oh, thank you for having
if I can
me.
do anything to help you, let me know.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me, and have a great soggy day
Mhm. Yeah, it's
in
beautiful.
the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, Sarah. Thank you. See
Bye.
you around. Bye.
See ya.